So today, what I want to speak about is Parshas Mishpatim. Now, there's a tremendous sicha from the Rebbe, which is the last sicha that the Rebbe said on this week's Parsha. And Parshas Mishpatim is a very, very interesting Parsha. So first of all, the Zohar says on Ve'ela HaMishpatim, these are the Mishpatim that this refers to Gilgal. Now, what's the connection of Mishpatim to Gilgal? And the connection is that um, the Torah, there's a very good story that sums this up. There was I don't know if the story is true, but it sounds good enough. And the story is that the two participants came to Reb Levi Yitzchak Barditcha for a din Torah. Now, what happened was this guy dropped off, I don't know, 50 barrels, let's call it, of olives by his friend to watch. He was going to the fair, watch my barrels of olives. Comes back, the friend died. And the friend has what's called an apotropos. He has how do you call it, an executor of the will. And the executor says to the guy, listen, you want to take 50 barrels, no problem, but you're taking money from somebody else. The law is, I don't know you. You're saying that you have these barrels are yours, not they don't belong to the orphans. So bring me proof. And he didn't have proof. It was his friend. So they go to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak for now. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, Barditchev, he could see it was clear that the guy was true, but the other guy is not budging. And the law is that he is, you have to bring proof. Rabbi Levi said, give me a day. He wanted to really ask Hashem, what's going on. And that night, I'm not sure how, but he was told by Hashem that, listen, this is the story. In a previous lifetime, this guy had taken 50 barrels from the other guy. So now he was giving it, he was paying back his debt. So we know everything in the Torah, famous stories that trying to remember the exact story. Either was it with Moshe Rabbeinu or was it the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, where he was told to go and he saw that a guy goes to stream of river and he was very tired and he loses, I don't know, he loses the pouch of money, and then another guy comes, another guy um I think I don't remember exactly. He finds the money and then he takes the money, and then the third guy is the original guy that lost it, or a second guy comes. He's just sitting there. I don't remember the exact details, but basically a night comes, and the night beats up the one guy that he thought that took the money, but he didn't take the money. You remember the story? But this time, okay, it's a story like this that basically one guy loses money, and another guy finds the money and walks off. And then the guy that lost the money comes, and there's a third guy there, and he thinks the third guy took the money, and he beats him up. But meanwhile, he doesn't have the money. So the question is, what's the justice here? So he says, in a previous lifetime, I think the guy that lost the money had stolen it from the guy that took the money. And the guy that got beat up was that they came to a rabbi, and the rabbi gave a wrong din Torah. He didn't. He judged it wrongly, and he favored the person that shouldn't have had the money, and so now he was getting his just due. So in other words, there's no such thing. They call it in the Eastern philosophy karma. There's no such thing as a person really getting away with murder. Famous story of Rabbi Akiva, that he's going by a river and he sees a skull, and he says that because you drowned others, you were drowned, and those who drowned you will be drowned. So one of the difficult things in life is that people struggle with justice. We could all handle a just world, but we can't handle an unjust world. The truth of the matter is that it's not that people are so just. It's that we need a sense of fairness. And the sense of fairness is because the ego doesn't like things to be unfair. How do I know that this is true? Imagine I tell you won the lotto. would you be so concerned that other people didn't win the lotto? So, so the point is not really justice that really motivates us so strongly. But it's the opposite. It's that it's not fair that I should have less than the other person. And well, I'm not going to go into the whole situation, but it's basically how the human ego functions. You even have studies with monkeys, very interesting studies. You give two monkeys two bananas. They're happy, they're both happy, but give one a banana and one a candy. The one that gets the candy throws a tantrum. The one that gets a banana throws a tantrum. It's not fair. Why should he have a candy and I have a banana? So there's an innate thing even with a monkey that says it's not fair. Why should it be like he's not a better monkey than me? If he was the king, okay, I understand he's the king. In fact, one of the mitzvahs of the Torah, last week's parsha, is not to be jealous. The question is, how do you not be jealous? So I forgot who says it. He says you shouldn't be jealous of your neighbor's wife, right? Oh, she's a pretty woman. Why don't I have? But he says, let's say a prince married a princess. Would you be jealous? Think about it for a minute. Prince marries a princess. You wouldn't even think that it's connected to you. I'm not a prince. How can I marry a princess? It's the same thing as every single thing that happens. Hashem wanted that guy to have that thing. It's not connected to you. There are those things that are connected to you. In fact, it says in Gemara, if a person's kind of jealous of somebody else's stuff, they could lose their own thing. Hashem wants you to be happy. You have your life. You have your gifts that nobody can touch. And he has his gifts that nobody can touch. And that's the reality. Don't worry about it. He can't hurt you and you can't hurt him. It's all fine. This guy, he came to a special year in Kansas City. He told me that a Russian once told him, you know the difference between the Russians and the Americans? That if a guy has gets a new car in Russia, so he tells the KGB on him, look, he got a new car, he stole. So in America, he says, oh, I can work hard and get a new car too. So that's the nature of jealousy. It's a destructive force. Where do we find jealousy in the Torah? It plays out. We find with Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech had a case. There were two women. One woman unfortunately slept on her child and smothered the child and took the other child. And they come and King Solomon says, okay, we'll take out a sword and we'll divide the child. So how did he know that one woman would say, they could both say, let's keep the child. But the reason she wanted this child was not because she wanted a child. It was because she was jealous that the other person had a child and she did not. So the force of jealousy is a destructive force, and all the forces of anti-Semitism and bullying, every destructive force is a force of jealousy. Because if a person, they say you can overcome any type of anger except for jealousy. Because if, let's say, you're angry because I insulted you, so I could apologize. You're angry because I stole money from you. I could give you the money back. But if I'm jealous of you, what are you going to do? I'm jealous. And that's why jealousy is a very destructive force. The only thing that you could really do is that the person can maybe become happy. A happy person isn't a jealous person. That's why, according to Chassidus, happiness is so important. Okay, so let's continue. Now, the Rebbe speaks about this week's parsha, similar kind of concepts. These are the mishpatim. Mishpatim are laws, and these laws should make sense according to human logic. However, the truth of the matter is that we find that human logic doesn't always prevail. For example, I don't know if you know this, but there was never the latest kind of 60, 70 years have been the most peaceful in human history. There was never a time that spanned more than 40 years that there wasn't like some kind of superpower conflict going on. Because what was the mentality in the olden days? I remember my brother-in-law, he's a very special rabbi, so when the disastrous ISIS came out thanks to Obama, so what happened was everybody was like horrified at their barbarity, right? He says, but the fact is that's how people behaved for thousands of years. People were barbaric. So it's only in recent times that this mishpatim, the idea of human rights and decency, has come to the world. And so the Rebbe says something very, very interesting, because that week's Parshas Mishpatim, Tafshin and Beis 1992, on Friday, there was a major event. And this event was that the at the UN, there was a agreement between Gorbachev and then was it President Bush, if I'm not mistaken. They decided on nuclear disarmament, and that was a very big thing because it was much more than just an agreement on nuclear disarmament. It was a cessation of war in general. In other words, beforehand the superpowers had a mentality of war, and now there was a new mentality in the world, which is we don't like war, we like peace. And this was a major transformative event where instead of the two powers saying, okay, we're going to butt heads and we'll see who wins, which happened in World War One, happened in World War Two, and millions of people die. In fact, it may be unparalleled in human history. First of all, not only starting with them, starting with the British giving away her countries, that there was a mentality after World War II, particularly, that we have to be just. We have to do the right thing. We're going to give a country to who the country belongs to. And slowly but surely, Russia itself, that was no lover of major peace, certainly under the communist time, said, we're also going to be peaceful. They gave away the countries that they inhabited, and it looks like they're not going to be successful inhabiting other countries. And furthermore, because it's a new time and a better time and a new age, and that's why countries are not accepting what they want to do now, because it's just not acceptable anymore. It's a new world. And so the reason this mentality came to the world is not because necessarily that the Goyim became so smart, because we find that they weren't so smart for thousands of years, but rather it's coming to the times of Moshiach. And two things have really occurred in the times of Moshiach. First of all, it's a spiritual reality. Moshiach spiritually is influencing the world to basically have a better mindset. And this is happening all over the world. We've had occasion to mention that 62% of the world, based on a recent Gallup poll, believe they have a personal relationship with God. A more older Gallup poll was 84% of the world believe in a higher power. So the fact of the matter is, and particularly obviously in Western countries where the belief systems are stronger, when you're walking down the street, 90% of the people believe in God. 60-70% of the people believe they have a personal relationship with God. So the fact of the matter is that God is alive and well. That was the title of this book written by Gallup poll, God is alive and well. And these were very serious polls that were taken. So the secular world, the last stand of the Klippa, the last stand of the dark side, is to try to make it out like they are right. But they're wrong. Not only are they wrong, they're wrong on all counts. Like right now we have in Israel, the crazy left are saying, oh, you're trying to force your way. No, actually, you're going against democracy of a country. You know what I mean? They're lying through their teeth in terms of what they're saying, and the left in America as well. Like we stand, no, you don't stand for democracy. You stand for terrorism. You stand for against the values of liberalism, against the values of giving people freedom. You stand for that you want to force everybody into your way. That's communism. That's tyranny. That's what you stand for. That's the way. They don't even realize that Obama had that mindset, and they all adopted since he became the president. 27% the left, 45% of the Democratic Party, represented by 27% of the country. They've become radically left. It's not like before. The right and the left were basically center, but the left has gone radically left. The right has gone more to the right, but not radically so. But the left has become radicals basically. And so, what's the point of that? That before Mashiach comes, things have to become clarified. It says in the book of Daniel, it will become clear who's good and who's evil. Yeah. And good and evil is very much a thought process. Which thought process is good? Which thought process is evil? And the Jewish thought process, and that's why Mishpatim is very important, that when we have a judgment, let's say a Jew, let's say, God forbid, gyps a Jew, even if the Gentile court will give the same exact decree as the Jewish court, you're not allowed to go to the Gentile court. You have to go to the Jewish court. Yeah? You may. Why do you have to go to the Jewish court? They're going to say the same thing. The answer is because the very reason that a Gentile court would say the same thing as a Jewish court is only because God programmed our minds to see things in the way that He wanted us to see. So we know innately there's certain things that are right and certain things that are wrong. But had God not programmed our minds, we could have been like monkeys. I was once in this place in Africa, And if you give whatever, you have some bananas. The monkeys are very comfortable stealing. They have no idea of right and wrong. They'll just steal from you. In other words, a human being that has an idea of not stealing. In fact, there are many places in Africa that concept. I remember a missionary telling me she was going to Africa. One of the things they were teaching people is don't steal. They were like, "What? God doesn't want me to eat?" Because in their reality, stealing was one of the ways you eat. In other words, if people could have a mentality that they're not even aware of these higher value systems, but there are higher value systems, there is right, there is wrong, and God obviously determines and helps us understand right from wrong. So therefore you have to go to God because God is the source of it all, and you have to do it according to God's way. So what the Rebbe says is something very profound, something that's very, very, very important for us to understand. If we don't understand this, we don't understand anything. And that is that Moshiach is the one that's changing the world. The reason that governments of the world that normally used to kill each other are now saying that let's not kill each other, let's get along. This is because Moshiach is in the air. And this begins, of course, with the previous Rebbe coming to America. The previous Rebbe said that Higiyaz Mangulaschem, we're ready for Mashiach, we've already polished the buttons. We are in a time that Mashiach is affecting, and this is very, very interesting, something that the Rebbe says in the Sikha, which a lot of people are not aware of. He speaks about shlichus, going out on shlichus, and he says, and the main thing is actually affecting the goyim. The Rebbe says elsewhere the idea that the Jewish people, that the Rebbe kind of gives unconditional love to the shluchim, his people, and his people give it to the Jews, and the Jews give it to the non-Jews, the Gentiles. Because the truth is, to have unconditional love, to have respect, unconditional respect, not I'm using you, but I actually respect you, you have to be respected. A person that's disrespected disrespects. A person that's respected respects. And the Rebbe was a source of unconditional respect, what they call in psychology unconditional regard. It's a very important thing to have, to respect yourself so you can respect others. And therefore, when people make a mistake, they don't realize the Rebbe said that this is what I read, that the Rebbe said that the novelty of Mashiach is that he'll be the Rebbe for the Goyim. We already had Rebbes. We had David HaMelech. David is called Mashiach. We have Moshe Rabbeinu. We have obviously the Rebbe. Maybe not everyone accepted him. But the point is, even Moshe Rabbeinu had some naysayers. The point is that Mashiach, when he comes, everybody will come. Right? My house will be a house of prayer to all people. Right? From Tzion will come to. It's very hard for us to conceptualize that the rabbis will become the spiritual leaders of the whole world. Now, that is, small scale happening in the Noahide world. Right? Gentiles are coming to the Jews and saying, you're the rabbi, what's right, what's wrong, come teach us. But when Mashiach comes, that will be the primary, there will be no other religions. It will just be the religion of Judaism, which has a place for Gentiles, the 7 Noahide laws. So, the Rebbe writes that part of the transformation of Russia happened because the Rebbes, from the time of the Alter Rebbe, they engaged in the Russian. Many Jewish groups, they don't engage in the secular world. And so, but the Rebbes of Chabad, they engaged very strongly, particularly we find this with the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe, very strongly in trying to bring justice. You see, the Rebbe, with a moment of silence, many people don't know this, but the Rebbe was in charge of creating the Board of Education in America. He wanted there to be a Board of Education. The Rebbe was highly invested in everything he could do to bring moral education and morality to the world. Because very much a Jew, and this is kind of the big secret, the first 2,000 years are called the 2,000 years of creation. They're also called the 2,000 years of chaos. I just want to see if this other guy wanted to join. They're also kind of called the 2,000 years of chaos. Now, the Hashem created then the Torah, and the Torah creates order out of disorder, civility out of uncivility. But it's not only for the Jewish people. Hashem wants the whole world to be civil. He doesn't want it to be exactly where the Jewish people are the first one. We have the highest standard, but therefore, what do you do? And if you think about the structure of a family, you know the structure of the world. The structure of a family is that you have an eldest son. Are you the eldest? Eldest? No. The eldest son, it says you have to give him a double portion. Why? Because Reishis Oini, the father gives most of his sons to the eldest son. Psychologically, we do that. Why? Because we put all our expectations. But why did Hashem make us do that? Because He has to be the role model to the brothers and sisters. And so the eldest son, you have an obligation in the Ten Commandments to respect the eldest son. Because, like it says, the S is there to add because the Ruach, the spirit of the father and the eldest son, because Hashem made the world in such a way that the eldest son is the one that kind of has the spirit of the father and it comes through the eldest son. So the spirit of Hashem, the spirit of righteousness comes through the Jewish people and through us it goes to the world. And sometimes it's not even in what you say because as Einstein said, the Rebbe says, you don't say Lahavda by a Jew, the Rebbe says, modeling is not another way to teach. It's the only way to teach. Nobody, you go out and you eat cupcakes and you tell me not to eat cupcakes. I do what you do. I don't do what you know. But if you don't eat, and I see that you're serious about healthy eating, so I'll have somebody to copy. So the Jewish people, there was a Russian writer who wrote, there are many great Russian writers, he said, when you're looking for the truth and you see a Jew, you see everything. If you're not looking for the truth and you see a Jew, you see nothing. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said this line that basically a whole story, but the best of them Snagdim became Chassidim, and then there were pogroms in Russia. It sent 1 million Lubavitchers to America, and people assimilated. And then the Goyim, who were looking for the truth, like we find this now, again, 70% respect for Jews, Judaism, and Israel in America, based on a not so long ago Pew poll. So why do they respect us? We're the most respected people in the world. We're not the most hated. Even if there's some anti-Semitism, there's no question about it that we're the most respected people. Why? Because people are looking for goodness in the world. They want people that are righteous. They want to be able to trust. But people have a nature that want people to be good. And in fact, usually when people are bad, it's because they feel that somebody hurt them and now they can be bad too. But the nature of human being is to seek a good world. He wants to live in safety and security and love and peace and harmony. That's the nature of every person. So people are looking for that. And when they see a Yid, and the Yid is a good person, they respect it. And so Hashem sent us with our value system to the whole world. And that's why the last 2,000 years are called redemption. Because in the last 2,000 years, we're at the end of it, Hashem spread us. And now we already, as the Rebbe said, finished Avodas Habarim. We finished collecting all the sparks. And we're literally ready for Moshiach to be here right now. As the Rebbe said, I heard it personally from the Rebbe, a greater question why the sun wouldn't come up in the morning is why Moshiach isn't already here. Because based on what we did, which is Avodas Habarim, it's very interesting because in this week's Sikha, where the Rebbe said this is a landmark case where Russia and America got together, because it was a transformation not only of a nuclear, the whole Russia changed, going away from being basically barbaric. I mean, Stalin himself killed 26 million people. Communism is responsible, they say, for 100 million people's deaths. Insanity of insanity. And then they said, no, we're changing. Right? The Iron Curtain fell. You want to leave Russia? You can leave Russia. Nobody's forced to be in Russia today. Truth be told, people in the West, as Henry Kissinger said, don't really appreciate some other countries. They say a barbarian nation needs a barbarian leader. Right? You take a country like Syria, and you take away its dictator. They'll kill each other like rats in a sack. These countries, they need dictators. The best thing you could do is have a benevolent dictator in these countries. Like what? America tried to bring democracy to Iraq. That worked really well. So the point is that a person has to have an understanding that the main thing is, it's actually an Islamic saying, but it's a true saying, better 1,000 years of tyranny than one day of anarchy. Why? Because in the end of the day, anarchy, everybody gets killed. But in tyranny, okay, just follow what the government says. You can live. It creates safety. And even in Judaism, we say pray for the peace of the government, because within it, you'll have safety. Even a bad government is better than no government. So the point is there has to be an acknowledgement that when a government changes, and it was massive changes because it happened also in China. China was a communist government, and they went away from that. Now the Chinese are basically free. You can leave, and you can... I mean, okay, we're not saying they don't have the freedom like we have. Russia doesn't have the freedom like we have. But the point is that you can do commerce. I wouldn't want to live under the Chinese government. But the point is that when you compare it to communism, which was a savage system, it's a basically a normal society today. Okay, you can't go against the government. Freedoms are not 100%. but it's not like it's still, there's always a balance between freedom and protection. There's never going to be, some countries there's too much freedom, some countries there's too much rule, but the balance will never get straight. Only Moshiach will be able to make that balance straight. No human being will ever get that balance straight. But as long as we accept that there's kind of a frequency of that balance, and generally, what are we looking for? We're looking for a righteous government, a government that wants to protect its people versus a government that just wants to conquer and conquest and abuses people and take whatever it can, like you see it in Africa. I lived in Africa many years. Many of the black governments, they're dictators of the worst proportions possible. And so the fact that the world reached this stage is massive because it's transformation of the world, and particularly for the Jewish people. I remember Mashpia, one of my mentors, saying that this is the first time in 2,000 years, and since then it maintained that Jews are free to practice Judaism everywhere in the world. Wherever you are in the world, you're free. Even in Iran right now, there's a minyan going on as we speak. There's a Beis Din, there's Shchita. Even in Syria, there are Jews. Wherever you go, even in these countries with problems, there's still Jews and free to practice Judaism. So the point is that we are in a situation of Mashiach. And why is this occurring? It's occurring because Mashiach is in the air. And what's the bottom line? I have to remember what the bottom line is. The Rebbe concludes that basically we all have to do whatever we can to add in the justice of the world. I don't remember all the details, but as Jews, before davening, we say, Areini Makabel, we accept upon ourselves to love unconditionally. And these are the things that hasten the coming of Mashiach, so we have to do this on a practical level, undertake unconditional love for a fellow Jew, to have justice. And as the Rebbe says, that Yiddishkeit boils down to goodness and kindness. Right? When CNN came to the Rebbe and they said, what is your message for the world? He said, Mashiach is already on the way. We have to add in goodness, yet we have to add in the realm of goodness and kindness. The reporter said, are you saying that if we add in goodness and kindness, it'll come sooner? The Rebbe said, immediately.